O God, we ask your blessing on our service this morning. May you touch our lives with your spirit, and may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Our opening hymn is Great is Thy Faithfulness, number 288 in Voices United. Judges ruled in Israel, a man named Elimelech from Bethlehem, and had left the country because of a famine and moved to the land of Moab. With him were his wife Naomi and his two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. During the time of their residence there, Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her two sons. These young men, Mahlon and Chilion, married girls of Moab. Orpah, I always want to say Oprah because it's, the same almost. Orpah and Ruth, but later both men died so that Naomi was left alone with her husband or sons. She decided to return to Israel with her daughters-in-law, for she had heard that the Lord had blessed his people by giving them good crops again. But after they had begun their homeward journey, she changed her mind and said to her two daughters-in-law, "Why don't you return to your parents' homes instead of coming with me? And may the Lord reward you for your faithfulness to your husbands and to me. And may he bless you with another happy marriage." Then she kissed them, and they all broke down and cried. "No," they said, "we want to go with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "It is better for you to return to your own people. Do I have younger sons who could grow up to be your husbands? No, my daughters, return to your parents' home, for I am too old to have a husband. And even if that were possible, and I should become pregnant tonight and bore sons, would you wait for them to grow up? No, of course not, my daughters. Oh, how I grieve for you that the Lord has punished me in a way that injures you." And again they cried together, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and returned to her childhood home. But Ruth instead insisted on staying with Naomi. "See," Naomi said to her, "your sister-in-laws went back to her people and to her gods, and you should do the same." But Ruth replied, "Don't make me leave you, for I want to go wherever you go, and to live wherever you live. Let your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. I want to die where you died, and be buried there. May the Lord do terrible things to me if I allow anything but death to separate us." And when Naomi saw that Ruth had made up her mind and could not be persuaded otherwise, she stopped urging her. So they both came to Bethlehem, and the entire village was stirred by their arrival. Their return from Moab and in Bethlehem was the beginning of the barley harvest. That is the first reading. Second reading is here in Matthew, chapter 5, verses 3 to 9. I'm sure you all know these. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God."
Good morning. Good morning. Today you heard a really hard love story of Naomi. She and her husband and two sons, who had been living in Bethlehem, were suffering through such famine that it was affecting all of Israel. The drought was terrible. So they all pulled up stakes and moved to Moab. They lived in a country that was new to them, with people of different backgrounds, customs, and perhaps religious beliefs. While they were there, the sons found beautiful Moab women, of course. Oh. Things were better for their family for a while. Food and jobs were plentiful, so all was good. However, then Naomi's husband got sick and died. She was in all likelihood living with her entire family, sons and a wife. Now things went from bad to worse. The story doesn't say how, but the two sons also died. The ladies must have been devastated. No husbands, grieving terribly, and no source of income now. No families to call on. And they're living in a country where no family is available to Naomi. Nobody to call on for help. Her faith must have been severely tested. God, where are you? Living with two daughters in a place that she had no support. Added to the burden of making ends meet with the boys gone, she also probably had considerable stress. 3 women in the kitchen all day, every day? Not easy. God's way is often different from our way, or the ways of the world. God's will frequently does not line up with the individual's plan. When we suffer extreme losses, we often seek a place to lay blame. Has God forsaken me? On the other hand, God's presence can offer a very calming effect and assist us managing stresses and tensions of everyday life and even death. God often comes to help us manage and cope with many uncertainties that we experience. We assume that Naomi not only continued her faith and customs after moving to Moab, but also taught the girls of her deep faith in God. They no doubt listened to her prayers and on occasion learned of her deep religious beliefs and customs. They attended worship services as a family, no doubt, and assisted in preparations for religious festivals and holidays as families do. The girls must have been a great comfort to Naomi during these sorrowful times. Then, after a while, Naomi heard that God had blessed Israel. The drought was over, the famine was over, there was food, there were jobs. She knew that God had been faithful to the people of Israel. She now could see a reason to go home. She wanted to go home. She needed to go home. And how could anyone blame her? I did a little research on the trip from Bethlehem to Moab, and it's 2,919 kilometers. Now, when you put that into the language of Stone Creek, it's from here to Key West. Now, there is a 20-kilometer home. So she packed up everything and the girls started out. However, very shortly after she started, Naomi stopped. And she said, pretend I'm Naomi right now. Okay, girls, I love you dearly, but this is my journey. Coming with me is a ridiculous idea. I need to go home where I started. I need to be with my family. You're young, you're beautiful, you're lovely girls. And you shouldn't be saddled with this baggage. You have family here that loves you and wants the best for you. They will work hard to find you new husbands and build a bright and happy future. I, on the other hand, once I get to Bethlehem, will have no status. I have no husband, no sons, so I can't help you in any way once I get there. I'm quite prepared to travel alone, so go home, go to your moms. You've been wonderful daughters, and I am grateful for your love and kindness staying with me through our terrible grief. I will always remember you and keep you in my prayers. Now, in the Good News Bible, it tells us that Naomi said, "May God be as good to you as you have been to me. And may the Lord make it possible for each of you to marry again and have a home." She called them daughters. They had come very, very close. Both girls rejected the idea initially, but finally one daughter did take her advice, hugged her, kissed her goodbye, and went home to her mother and family. Ruth, however, must have loved Naomi greatly. She decided to stay in spite of everything. When we read her response, it's clear she was prepared and adamantly willing to give up everything she knew and loved in order to be with and care for Naomi. Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. When I hear her words, I find it difficult to think that I could be even remotely as courageous. I must admit, I know very few women who would have taken the road that Ruth would take. Can you imagine taking on the task of not only looking after your mother-in-law, but in order to do so, walking all the way to the Florida Keys? I did occasional driving, Canadian food, and a tongue going here. Did occasionally drive. My mother bought a special events or out to lunch or shopping, but we never went on holidays much lived together. I have to think that each of us can identify in some way with this story of Naomi and Ruth and the presence of God throughout. There have been times when we each have cried, "God help me." And others only said, "God, where are you when I need you?" And often we see later that there has been help through our troubles, even though we've not been able to see it at the time. We have friends who come to our aid without being asked, and we often have loved ones and church members that help. Interesting story, in 1983, just after I was separated, I had to move out of my home and find a smaller one. I was unable to get a bank loan without a mail backer. 1983. My dad had died when I was 17, and the bank would not accept my mother as a co-signer. Talk about crash. My lawyer said, "Just give me a little time, I've got an idea." Boy, I was praying for a miracle. The following morning, a knock came very early to my door, and a church member, and some of you may remember Glenn Dawson, came to my door and he said, "Hey, kid, I figured you need a loan." And I said, "Yeah, I need a mortgage loan. But the bankers won't talk to me." And he said, "Yeah, bankers are like that, but my percentage is going to be the same as theirs, but you've got your mortgage." God does work in mysterious ways. knew that I came to church regularly. He also knew that I had a job. And he figured and prayed, no doubt in my mind, that I would pay up on time. Well, God was listening to my prayers, and he was listening to them too, because I did pay up. We sometimes don't get the answers we want, but then sometimes those answers are not meant to be. Perhaps God works out the purpose ahead of time and blesses those who just believe. Trust. God is faithful. He cares. God provides. God is faithful to people. Our second reading was the beloved Beatitudes, and most of us had to memorize those in Sunday school. I remember that. We may have memorized them, but did we live by them? Do we still? It's not an easy task to be faithful to the teachings of Jesus on how to be a great Christian. I think the Sermon on the Mount has given us a wonderful guidebook. Number one, happy are those who know they are spiritually poor, the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. I read this to say that we're on a continuing education program when it comes to our own spiritual needs. I truly think that it's telling us that if we recognize how much we don't know about the Spirit of God in us, then we're on the right track. We need to keep wondering, studying, and getting better at knowing how much we need God. Number two, those who mourn unfortunate, God will comfort. That comfort may come from our family, friends, church family. We need to recognize that this is how God works, and be thankful. Happy are those who are humble. They will receive God as promised. As hard as this is to swallow, we need to recognize that we don't have all the answers. We must continue to learn and grow and humble ourselves before God. Number four, happy are those whose greatest desire is to do what God requires. None of us has been able to give as much as Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa, but I read this to say that we should be doing the best we can as often as we can. 5. Happy are those who are merciful to others. God will be merciful to them. This is no surprise. Be kind, love others. Happy are the pure in heart. They will see God. I'm afraid on this one I fail lots and often. I'm often cranky about something. I get bad thoughts, anger, occasional revenge planning. I need to work on this one. Lots. Number 7. Happy are those who work for peace. God will call them his children. The reconciliation process extends to peace between each other in our homes, at work, with relatives, with friends, through our community. Man's inhumanity to man is found all over this world, and our prayers are often not enough. We need to be much more aware of the atrocities occurring here at home as well. Some are even done in the name of the church. I grew up in Hagersville, right next door to the Six Nations Reservation. I had absolutely no idea that there was a residential school in Radford. Not until recently. Talk about in the sand. I also like to think that our military, who is stationed in warring nations, were and are on the right side, and doing things to ensure that those who come after the battles are over can find some peace and well-being. We must keep listening and doing good things. Number 8, happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires. The kingdom of God belongs to them. This one also is very hard. In John 15, verses 18 and 19, Jesus warns us, there is hate in this world. This can range anywhere from a stare at the restaurant if you happen to pray before your meal, to outright rejection, physical pain, suffering, and even death in some situations. Religions have been warring since Cain and Abel, and we learn to stay in our own lane and love God quietly without ruffling feathers. This may not be quite what is required. However, that's how we roll. God is good. God is faithful. God comes to us when we need it to happen, and not always when we call for it. We often take God's faithfulness for granted. We ask for things to happen, and perhaps we neglect to say thank you when we do receive the desired outcome. I recall when my son Greg was in Afghanistan working in the valley of Canadian Chinook helicopters, and friends asked me, "Aren't you worried about Greg over there?" I told them that I had put my prayers into action. I asked God to keep him safe, help him come home with all his body parts. I had handed the burden to a higher power. I had absolutely no power to change the course and direction my son takes. I had no power to change the war and how it was working out in Afghanistan. Worry saps my energy and takes away my ability to do other things for good. What I do have is faith that my prayers can be answered. Fortunately, that time they were, and believe me, I said thank you, loud and often. God is always there, and we can feel that spirit if we just be still and ask for it. I thank God regularly for the good things that have happened in my life, and I rarely feel the need to ask for much. We live in Canada. We are truly blessed. Perhaps we need to just take a breath and be ready to listen to God's voice. It comes in our thoughts and sometimes through our actions. God is every day ever faithful. We are, on the other hand, maybe not so much. It takes considerable courage to admit fault and pray, "Forgive me, God, for I have sinned."
God
Now, as we go out into the world, may God bless you and keep you. May He make His face shine upon you and give you peace.